All right, we want to welcome you to the CastingPoint podcast. This is our second installment. Actually, this is where we really are kicking things off, and there couldn't be a better guest than who we have today. So, again, you're with us today. My name is Tim Bycroft. This is Matthew Parker, and running the things behind the scenes is Joey Nesser. Glad to have you guys with us today. Hey, our guest today is not truly a guest. From the standpoint of most of you will probably know him and have seen him around this place for quite some time. The incredible, the none other, Doug Rendall.
Yay, Doug. I love Doug. You know, I think we should point out that your statement just before was false. I mean, we could get a better guest, but we had to settle for Doug.
I was available.
It's the only one that would answer our calls.
He was in his office.
The millions of calls we made.
Yeah, so many calls.
And he rose right to the top of the only one answering. So
I should not answer my phone.
No.
That's just wrong. Shouldn't be in my office either.
Yeah, you got to get that cleaned out, right?
whoa,
Oh, it's pretty close.
it's getting clean. That's for sure.
It sounded so threatening. You gonna clean that office out?
You know,
Well, it's first come, first serve, so I plan on staking my claim there.
I don't think so.
Well, one great thing about Doug Rendall, there's a multitude of great things, but one great thing that has taken place in his life recently is he is a new grandpa.
Amen.
oh,
Yeah,
I should have brought pictures.
you should have pictures.
Can we edit that in?
How do you not have pictures?
I don't have my phone.
Oh, I
you
was about to
forbade
say.
me to
You
have
know,
a phone.
it used to be, right? It used to be back in the day. You had the wallet.
In your wallet.
Here's a- Not anymore. Here's
Looks like
the
an
phone.
accordion.
Yeah.
What's a wallet?
Let's write that down. No baby pictures. Does not love baby.
Does not.
You're not being a good grandpa.
Not starting off well, is it?
Wow.
So I love your and I won't steal your thunder,
Nope.
especially the middle name. I love the middle name. But explain a little bit behind your grandbaby's name.
Oh, I thought you were going to explain how she came to be. But I was ready with that answer.
Birds and the bees.
So her name is Olivia Sunday.
Yeah.
Which most people, when they hear that, they're like, say what? Sunday. Why Sunday? And I wish I had
Ice cream?
ice cream.
Yeah. Ice cream Sunday.
People have actually asked that. Is it spelled with a D-A-E? No. It's the day of the week. And I wish I had my daughter-in-law, Maddie's, actual explanation that she sent to us about that. But it basically came down to the two of them had started keeping a daily day of rest. You know, every Sunday was their Sabbath day.
Huh.
And they just found great peace in that, especially when their beloved dog passed away. And they were, just very brokenhearted about that.
Yeah.
And they said and they've been talking about, a middle name for their upcoming daughter. And, they didn't want just an ordinary name. They wanted it to be something special. And I think they'd actually been talking about that as a possible name just because of what the Sabbath had been meaning to them. But especially after their dog passed, going through that whole week, and then it came to Sunday, and they just felt such peace through that, that God's given us a day of rest, and they'd been keeping that and just getting great fulfillment from that. But especially after their dog passed and that day came and brought them that peace, they're just like, that's got to be the name.
Yeah.
Just a reminder every week of God's faithfulness and the rest and restoration that he gives us on a weekly basis.
I love that. I love that story. I love that name. I wish it was ice cream, but this is much better. That idea of peace, that idea of finding that rest in God. I just love that. And every time they look at their daughter, they can be reminded of that. And
Fulfilling peace.
Especially when she's crying at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
Peace.
so peaceful.
Peace.
So much peace right now. That's a great name. I didn't know that. That was the first time I'd heard that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Amazing story. So, Doug, if you didn't know, Doug Rendall, he is actually on staff here at the Point Church, has been for the last, I believe, 7 years.
This is the 7th year.
Yeah, 7th year.
What a good number to end on.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Another reminder. another nudge out the door.
Actually, yeah, we'll get to that here in a little bit, what that's going to look like. But Doug is actually married to Ramona, who's been on staff a few times here at the church and has always just been an amazing, integral part of this church. And one of the things about Ramona that I love, and Doug is there right alongside of her, is the amount of serving behind the scenes that Ramona Rendall does. You may say, Ramona Rendall, who is that? But I will tell you there is a lot of people who know her from just the fact that she has a heart and a passion for helping people in need. Sometimes they're the people that are maybe not necessarily up front, but they are definitely people who are in need, and she is always there to help. And her and Doug do a tremendous job with that. So, Ramona, we love you. We thank you for putting up with Doug all these years.
It's her greatest service.
Amen.
So another thing that not only has Doug been part of staff for the last 7 years, you've actually been part of the church for about the last 20 years, close to 20
years. Yep.
Yeah, before coming on staff. So what did you do before coming on staff at the Point Church? Actually, it was called North Point Church at the time. And before that, it was North Point Community Christian Church.
Man, that's a lot of words.
A lot of MPCCCs going on there. Yeah.
Yep. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that was a major part of my life before coming to North Point Church. And Matt, I don't know if you even realize how we ended up at North Point Church. But
I know you've tried to tell me before, but sometimes it just whew.
I think mostly it was falling asleep. But
yeah, it probably was.
we can get into that later. But yeah, before coming to North Point, since the age of 9, I was in another church called the Worldwide Church of God, which was officially listed in the official book of church cults.
So you were a cult member.
Cultist.
Cultist.
He was a cultist.
Not a cult, but
The occult.
A cult.
I knew it.
A cult.
a cult, not a cult. A cult.
Not that kind of cult.
Wow, there's all kinds of cults that we didn't know about.
Wow.
Yeah, so our family joined that church way back when I was just a little kid. And that just, obviously, being in that church for 30 years just shaped a lot of who I have become. Obviously, for all of that time, we didn't realize we were in a cult. And I think just the fact that it was in this book of cults, they define a cult as a church that believes that they are the only true church.
Yeah, it wasn't like you guys were sacrificing goats and, occasionally a goat and a sheep would be sacrificed, but
I'm sworn to secrecy.
at least no human sacrifices were being made. But it wasn't that type of cult, as many people may think. It was,
right. Yeah, that obviously has a lot of negative connotations and weird connotations, basically it's just the belief of that church that they were the only true church. All other churches, literally every other church on the planet was wrong.
Yeah.
They didn't have the truth that was revealed to the founder of that church.
Yeah. Luckily, you found that church. You're here now. So, that's sarcasm. Sorry. Laden with sarcasm.
We need that sign back.
Yeah.
We need the emoji sign for whenever he's
sign.
being sarcastic.
Need a banner at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I'll just throw that in post every time. Sarcasm.
Well, actually, the best part of being in that cult was that I met Ramona.
Yeah.
So,
Very nice.
you can always look at the bright side
That's
of
a win
things.
right there.
That's a win.
We were talking about the goat sacrifices, sheep sacrifices, those kind of things. But actually, one of the things that this church did, if I remember right, is they did follow a lot of Old Testament law, if you will, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which wasn't necessarily all bad to some degree.
No, I think that you spoke on this one weekend. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about the importance of some of the that some of their doctrine taught you that you actually carry in your life right now.
Right. I mean, we were talking about the Sabbath a minute ago, and that was obviously one of them. Basically, the founder of that church, read the Bible, the entire Bible, but for whatever reason, very much focused on the Old Testament, and saw all of these commands and laws and traditions that God gave to His special people, Israel,
Right.
Just for them, and saw that all of these things were given, and to be kept forever. Throughout all your generations, you shall keep these feast days or keep the Sabbath day. And all of those days were a literal 24-hour period, the Sabbath being Saturday, of course. So we kept a Sabbath from Friday night at sunset. Could start earlier, but definitely don't start later because then you're sinning. But we kept that Sabbath from sunset to sunset, from Friday night to Saturday night.
Wow.
Now, real quick, Doug, what does keeping the Sabbath mean? Because like in Jerusalem, people would keeping the Sabbath would be you couldn't even push like a button on an elevator. What would the Sabbath mean to your family?
Oh, that's a great question.
We weren't as extreme with it. The church as a whole wasn't. I mean, you can read about the Sabbath in the Old Testament, as far as carrying a certain load for a certain distance. Yeah. We weren't quite that severe with it, but as a kid, I saw it as not having any fun for 24 hours.
Right.
No TV, no, going out and playing baseball. We could be outside and playing quietly. But there's definitely no TV unless there was a nature program or something on, because that's educational, honoring God. But it especially affected us, affected me in high school. All the high school activities were Friday night or Saturday, so no sports, no drama, no attending anything. So that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
That's like a strange level of isolation.
Yeah. And actually, the one of my biggest regrets of being in that church was Ramona and I had been married just a short time. We had a house in a town called Palmdale outside of Pasadena, where the main headquarters of the church was. We met at the church college, which is right there in Pasadena, and then later bought a house in Palmdale. So we had good neighbors. We got along really well with our neighbors, and there was one day, Saturday, that our neighbor across the street was moving. We hid in our house, watched through the curtain as all the neighbors were helping this family move, because that would be work.
Right.
That's why you moved away, right? That one incident.
That one, no.
But it still sits with you. Like you still remember that. That's pretty.
Well, yeah. We just felt so terrible that we could not, go help our neighbors move, because that would be working on the Sabbath.
Oh my.
And that's in our adult life. So, yeah, that's one of the very negative sides of that.
Yeah, but you also had.
Now, if their ox had fallen in a ditch, we could have helped. But,
yeah, right.
But they were just moving. So
does that include their tire falling off their trailer or something? Yes,
right.
We could help, but you've told this story, and I actually love this story because from somebody I know when we start talking about money, people start falling off the rails. But it was interesting how you guys in this church really put an emphasis on tithing and giving and charity, but you also put away another 10th for one of the feasts, if I remember right.
That's just one of 3.
Yeah.
So tithing, is instructed for Israel. So we tithe. Religiously, if you will. It was 10%. It's not like, well, I'll give what I can. You had to give 10% to the church. But if you look at how God dealt with Israel, there were 7 feast days throughout the year, and back then, observing one of the feast days meant going to Jerusalem. So there's obviously expense in doing that, depending on how far away you were. So God also told them to set aside a second 10th of their income to be used for the feast days, to pay for food and transportation. If they were catching an Uber to Jerusalem or whatever, they
could be expensive.
Yeah. So they paid their 10% to the temple. They they saved another 10% that was only to be used during these 7 feast days. But then every third year in a 7-year cycle, so basically year 3 and year 6 of every 7-year cycle, there was a third tithe. And that was to be given and used by the temple for the orphans and widows. So we did all that. So living in Southern California, working for a nonprofit, which was the church, making very little, but every third year we're putting 30% of our income aside. I mean, that wasn't to be used for paying bills or anything.
That's on top of
Not just once,
taxes
but 3 times.
Yeah.
For the whole year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, every third and 6th year of a 7-year cycle, we were basically giving away 20% of our money, and then at least the 10% we could use on ourselves. So feast days were really that. I mean, if you can imagine, you've got 10% of your income to use just on 7 occasions in the year.
That's a good party right there.
That's like vacation right there.
That's a great party.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you guys do that sometimes? I mean, you guys would, as a church, would take that money and...
Well, one of the 7 feast days is actually the Feast of Tabernacles, which some people have heard. The CCC in Zion, when it originally started, they used to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, and that was a 7-day thing. So for 7 days, again, we had 10% of our income to really celebrate, and that's what it was meant to be.
That's some kind of party right there.
Yeah, that is.
So there were good aspects of that.
So there was give and take in some of that, but then you kind of had to walk through a lot of things, I'm sure, to figure out, okay, what is it that God is asking us to do? What do you think God is calling us to? What does the New Testament reveal in partnering with God in His relationship, and what are those? What are those things that He demands, and what are those things that He requests? What are those things that you can find grace in? And there were a lot of questions that you guys had to wrestle with as you moved through that, I'm sure.
Right, and the whole church did. I mean, the church itself was in that frame of mind for about 50 years, until the founder, was pretty much at death's door, and I don't know if God had been working with him and telling him that something's not right about all this. So it was literally a week or two before he passed that he got his successor and a couple of his other close leaders in the church, and just told them, I'm not going to be around much longer, and when I go, I want you guys to just research, and make sure that everything that we're doing as a church is biblical. And that's exactly what they did. And sure enough, they read the Old Testament. It was like, yeah, we're doing everything in the Old Testament.
Then they read the rest.
And then they
turned the page and went,
wait, we don't have to be doing all this.
There's a New Testament?
A new covenant. So yeah, over the course of several years, they started overturning a lot of all of this, and they would send out recordings from a sermon given at headquarters, explaining their newfound information, and they'd send that out to all the other churches around the world, literally, and the local churches would play these tapes, and we'd have our eyes open, and the pastor, would engage with everybody and further explain things. And I literally remember being at home one day after one of those messages, after they just seemed like almost weekly or at least monthly, they were overturning things that we used to think we had to do or we were sinning. And I remember talking with Ramona about that, and I said, what, I agree with this. I agree with all these things that they've been presenting to us. But if they ever say the 7th-day Sabbath is not required, then we're out of here. Sure enough. That came along, but it was explained so well, from Scripture.
Right. Well, I wondered how many people wrestled with that as they started to really back up on some of the things that they had been teaching people for so long. How many people, really fought back or pushed back on that, or how many of them were like, whew.
Yeah, inversely, how many? Yeah. What was it like a Jerusalem situation where Peter stood up and all of a sudden everyone was like, yeah,
right.
Yeah, there's. I don't know what the percentages are. I'd say at least half and half. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
a lot of us. It's probably more than half were in favor of all the changes.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, having been doing this for so long and been convinced that they had to do this, they had to do that.
Right.
Clean and unclean meats and all the Sabbath days and the feast days. And,
Yeah.
a lot of people
That's a
did
whole
not
lot
want
to
to
remember.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you've
It's
been indoctrinated into the cult lifestyle.
Right. It's just so much work.
Right.
To just, I think Jesus brought us that freedom.
Yeah.
That, hey, you don't have to be so concerned about every little thing. You don't have to worry about when sunset is, and we literally followed the sunset tables. Okay, what time is sunset Friday? Because we gotta,
I think there's also some warning in there for us, for particularly those who teach, particularly those who, well, all of us to some degree, but particularly those who are teaching, is to make sure that what we are teaching lines up as best as we can possibly be with what God's revealed to us through the Scripture.
Right.
Because it's easy to maybe misinterpret or whatever. And so context. One of the things I say often is context is king, and so keeping things in context is vitally important, because it's easy to get caught up in things that may be steering us further away from God than drawing us closer. So, so with that being said, so there was a little bit of a shakeup in the church, and so what came out of that?
Well, there were a lot of people, like I said, that didn't believe in that. Thought, the leaders of the church are just going the way of all other churches. Just going toward mainstream, what's called, so-called Christianity, and that was our term. Those so-called Christians out there that believe in grace and all of that. But a lot of people, a lot of ministers, pastors actually continued to lead their people astray, or at least their eyes weren't open to it, and they went and formed their own churches. So there's, literally dozens of splinter groups that came off of this church as this church joined mainstream Christianity. And I think it was Hank Hanegraaff, the Bible Answer guy.
Yeah.
He was so interested in what was happening with this church back then. And on his program, he did a whole segment on the Worldwide Church of God and said, this is the only cult that has ever turned away and joined mainstream Christianity.
Yeah, turn back.
It's the only church in the book of church cults that they ever had to take out of there.
Well, there's another claim of fame for the Doug Rendall.
What an achievement. Gold star.
Well, praise God for that.
So you're able to come out of that, and at this point, you're probably searching for churches. You're probably searching for a place to be, and does that lead you to North Point Community Christian Church first, or did you search around for a while? Where did that take you?
Well, our church, as it came out of all that, then we were fine with it. We had a congregation in northern Kenosha, coincidentally very close to where we live now. And we were doing fine with that church, in the new freedom of the new covenant. But our pastor just felt a calling to move down south and begin a new church down there, which he did. And that's actually what led us to look for another church.
Start looking, yeah.
We lived in Winthrop Harbor. We knew that, hey, there was this church there called North Point. We remembered years before that getting little postcards from this church called North Point that was meeting at Westfield School, of all places.
Oh, yeah.
We remembered seeing the signs out there by the road. And
we were like the Israelites in the desert for years.
Wandering, setting up our
Wandering.
tents.
the Israelites in the gymnasium.
Yeah.
We decided to check that out. It was actually a meeting at Zion High School at the time. And that literally was our plan, to just check it out and look at other churches in the area. But that first day that we went, Pastor Corley was preaching, and
The OG.
OG.
When it really comes down to it.
yeah,
when it really comes down to it, the OG.
but yeah, we just loved his preaching. We loved the music that was, I forget who was leading it at that time. Somebody named Parker, I think.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking high school. I was like, well, you said that, and my first thought was, who else was at the high school?
It was him. And actually, what I mentioned earlier about what really drew us to that church was, I remember I think it was in Happenings magazine or something. We saw a little blurb about Winthrop Harbor Band to play in I forget, somewhere outside of Milwaukee at some Christian festival. There's this band called 38 Acres, which we'd never heard of. We're like, hey, we like Christian contemporary music. We'll go check out that concert there and find out who this Winthrop Harbor Band is. And that was our first exposure to 38 Acres.
That's pretty
wow,
cool.
this
I didn't know
church
that.
actually had its own
They
band.
had their own band.
Wow.
They were so cool.
Cool. Cool.
So, yeah.
So you checked it out once, and that was it.
Never returned.
Never,
No.
never to darken the doorsteps again.
No, we just drove away and said, I don't think we need to look any further because we just loved it there.
Nice.
You know, been stuck here for 20 years.
20 years.
So then you were the guy who helped set up the screen every Sunday morning, right? With those little buttons that you had to click on there. Then you had to rip them off at the end and roll it back up.
No.
Set up and tear down team. Set up and tear down. That was nice. Yeah.
But
Perks of a mobile church.
Yeah. The Porta Church. Porta Church.
Church.
I do remember, though, that we liked the music so much, we kind of asked around to say, hey, do they record these services at all? Oh, yeah, a guy in the back, he can make you a cassette tape of the service.
Yeah.
And I'll bet that was a short little dude with a mustache named Alan Stidham.
Yes.
Otherwise known as Lane. You heard me right, folks. Lane Stidham.
Lame.
Lame Stidham.
Lame Stidham.
Wait, you're saying lane as in like bowling alley lane?
Actually, that
Yes.
is his name. But he goes by Al. Everybody knows him by Al around here. But
That's
if you talk
so
to his
weird.
fan,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're learning so much today.
Yeah, I am.
That's why we have this program, for you.
For people
for you to
like
learn.
What's funny is perspective-wise, there's nothing better than sitting between two ancient individuals and just breathing in all this knowledge, drinking it in.
Over 110 years worth of.
Man,
Wow. When you-
most of it. I
combined,
mean,
when you put it
you're
that
like
way.
what, like 30?
I'm on. Yeah. Exactly.
Wow.
Well, and from the camera angle,
35.
They look really large, like
Oh, do they seriously?
to
Oh,
you?
this is great because you guys
Yeah.
are closer.
they're the cherubim.
Hey guys,
Sure. Should put our wings over him.
does that make me the Ark?
Yes.
When I look at him, I do want to cover my eyes.
Oh,
Thanks, buddy.
nice.
Trying to stay humble here. You're helping me out.
Yeah. So anyway, Doug, back to Doug. Enough about
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Let's
back
talk
to
about
me.
me. So Doug, he shows up at North Point Church at the time, and you were here, and I remember you saying something else that drew you guys in was the kids. You were looking for a place that
Yeah.
Matt and Tim both, who are your sons,
Right.
could definitely get involved with. And I think if I remember right, you said, wow, you were just amazed by what was happening with the student ministries at the time.
Yeah, because I think growing up in our church, I mean, once we could sit away from our parents, we would sit in the last row, write notes, pass notes back and forth, play games, do whatever we could do without getting into too much trouble. Then we come to North Point and got our two young boys, and obviously want a place where they can fit in and learn about God. And we were amazed that literally like the first 3 rows up on the right side was all like junior high and high school kids, and they were not only not playing games, they were enjoying the worship, they were raising their hands, and they just looked so sincere, compared to us when I was a teenager, passing notes and just goofing around.
When is this over?
Trying to pass the time. But yeah, we were just very impressed by the whole youth ministry, and it worked out well for us.
It stayed that way, where it was like the youth were always on the right hand side in the front for like years. I don't know if it's still like that today.
I think it was all the way up until just after. Actually, you know what? You say that, we still do have some that are still sitting there, because all of Donna's boys still sit there.
Yeah.
Which is so funny.
Well, one of the reasons is that's where you get the best cell reception in the building.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
So gaming is so much better.
So
when
much
you're in that
easier.
spot, so
And you never look left.
I never.
You always look left, but you're never really looking left.
Well, I'm really looking at all the room. When you have eyes like mine, you can see all the room.
Good
at
old
one time.
chameleon Tim.
So
Gonna call you Zoolander, Tim. Now can't turn left.
There you go.
So all this time, Doug, you started in North Point, and you were working at Walgreens at the time. How long were you there? You were there for quite a while too, right?
I was at Walgreens for 5 years.
5 years, okay.
And then moved to another job just down the street from there, actually, for another 5 years.
Okay,
I was in the Deerfield area for about 10 years.
right. So you were in the tech business. Well, I say tech business or IT business, and the computer business, and the
Sure.
what were you?
Yeah, all that.
All that. I played with computers.
Software engineer by trade.
That's way too cool a name. IT guy.
IT guy. the tech guy.
Coding. You were doing some coding.
Yeah,
All that fun stuff.
Codeine.
Coding.
Cody.
Codeine. Coding.
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 Okay.
Coding.
I heard that wrong.
So you were working at this other business down the street from Walgreens where you'd worked for 5 years. Now you've been at the other place for 5 years.
5 years.
And,
The other place, not to be confused by OPs.
Yeah, not to be
OP. Excuse
yeah.
me. Yeah, you were.
Did not work at OP.
Never made pizza, no.
Oh, he would have been my waiter. So anyway, I will not digress on that.
You already did.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Anyway, too late. Anyway, so you're working at another computer software company, and what happened then? I mean, what was going on? I remember a little conversation that you and I had right out in this hallway outside this room one evening.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You probably got a better memory than me.
No, not really. Maybe it wasn't you I was talking to.
Now he doesn't even know. Oh, crap.
Not sure where you're going with that.
Well, I think if I remember right, you were talking about life and where your life was heading and job situations. And if I remember right, God laid something on my heart and he laid something on your heart that kind of changes the trajectory of your job situation.
All right. I don't remember that specific conversation, but I know that pretty much the last couple years, at least the last 2 years of working at that place. I mean, after I'd been a software engineer for almost 30 years. That's older than you.
That is older than me.
I've coded software longer than you've been alive. But yeah, it just seemed like kind of gradually I just lost my passion for it. I always loved it. I mean, I just loved what I was doing, creating things, making computers do what I wanted it to do or what it needed to do. And just all of a sudden, it just wasn't fun anymore. And it was to the point where I had told Ramona, you know what, if I lose this job for whatever reason, if I get fired or laid off or the business folds or whatever, I'm not going to apply for this kind of job again. I mean, I'll be a greeter at Walmart or something, but I just have no passion to do this anymore. And I guess we did have that conversation, and maybe that's when God laid that on your heart.
I believe it was. Actually, I was thinking about that conversation, and I actually think that conversation, I got ahead of the game, or behind the game. I think that conversation took place when you were between Walgreens and the other place. So I got the years mixed up a little bit, but that was where that conversation was. But it was interesting that you had another revelation during that time where God just provided between those two jobs, and
Right.
It was a pretty amazing story too. But we'll go back to where we were at with the transition to here.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned earlier about me being here 7 years, and that's a great number.
It is.
Well, and I don't know if you even remember this, Tim, the date that you texted me. I'd actually just got home from work. I think I was just coming in the door and saw that I had a text on my flip phone.
Yes.
Way back
flip
then.
phone. What kind of flip phone?
I don't know.
Probably a razor.
Yeah.
Motorola.
Nokia.
I was an LG guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the LGs.
Yeah.
It seemed to hold up pretty well for me. I was rough on phones.
And now they got flip phones coming back now. And
Right,
for
everything's
$1,000.
That's true. Text on your phone.
What?
You got a text on
I
your
got
phone?
a text on my phone. Thanks for reining us in. But yeah, just there's a text from Pastor Tim. And I believe it was to the effect of, hey, are you anywhere close by the church? I wrote back, said, yeah, I just got home. Why? And you said, yeah, could you drop by the church? And I asked, why? What's this about? And you just wrote back, your future. And the date was 7/7/14. July 7th.
Pretty big
That's
deal.
Good number.
That's a really
number.
good series of numbers right there. You could have won the lottery.
7 complete. 7 complete. 14.
Double complete.
Double complete.
Double.
7 times 2.
So I should have known that I'd only be here 7 years. I had no idea.
Right.
Actually, yeah.
But yeah, it was July 7th, and I said, yeah, I can drop by. So I just dropped by the church and had an interesting talk with you.
Yeah. And the rest is history.
History.
Until recently. Now, recent events. I mean, Doug has been here at the church. And if you don't know this, Doug has just been doing an amazing job as the associate pastor here. He's filled so many roles. One of the greatest roles that he fills is whatever Tim doesn't want to do.
That's my job description.
It's part of his job description.
Yes, it is.
And but if you look at our website, if you look at so much of what we do for communications, Doug has had his hand in all of that, and it's amazing, and it's second to none to churches out there, literally around the world. So Doug has just done an amazing job. But one of the things that that Doug felt called to was to retire because he's
so old.
he's getting old. Old.
So-
But there's kind of an interesting story behind how you felt like, now I can retire. Willing to share some of that today, or all of that?
How much time you got?
Not that long.
Is
He's
there-
long-winded in his old ears.
We're dying to know.
Really?
We're dying to know.
Oh,
Wow.
That wasn't an age joke. I think it was where you're headed with the story.
I think I was the last one to get that. Joey's always way ahead of me.
I'm the fun meister.
The short version is that both of our boys, as a lot of you know, live in Colorado. Tim went out to Colorado Christian University for college and just loved it out there and decided to stay. And the 4 years he was there, Matt had been visiting him at least once a year, going on snowboarding trips. And he decided that he wanted to move out there too, which he did. So obviously we have that draw towards Colorado. And had always thought that, yeah, when the time's right, when God says it's okay to retire, that's where we want to go. We want to obviously be out there with them. And I think obviously in God's good timing, just at the same time that young Tim and his wife Maddie are having Olivia, who?
Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah. So with that, with Olivia coming soon, we wanted to have just a big family event in Florida, just a kind of a final thing before child comes.
And ruins it all.
Before they're locked in.
Child comes and ruins
Or their life is over.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah, we just rented a condo down there on the beach in Florida and just had we were planning on having a wonderful week together with them. I think it was on day 2, if not 3. We thought it'd be a good idea that the boys and I, mostly the boys, we had the idea so from our 15th floor balcony, we could see that there was a sandbar out there, kind of coming out from shore and then going across parallel to shore. And it's like, wow, we can just walk out there and be so far out and just be on the sandbar and everything will be fine. And
Nothing possibly could happen to us.
What could go
What
wrong?
could go wrong?
Famous last
So
words.
how well do you swim, Doug?
not well at all.
Not well, huh?
No.
No.
But there's a sandbar.
So
Tim, there's a sandbar.
let's go 2 miles out into the ocean. Walking.
Wasn't quite
Got
that far.
this.
Bottom line, I almost drowned.
No problem.
Should have been like Jesus and walked on water.
I tried. It did not work. It did as long as there was a sandbar underneath.
Right.
But, I got swept off the sandbar and literally just found myself in deep water, not knowing what to do or how to couldn't get back to the sandbar because the waves were coming in. And the boys actually had to come out and help me, just trying to tread water. And neither of them are extremely strong swimmers either. They're much better than me, but trying to keep themselves up and keep me up. We found our last recourse was just to yell for help. And it's interesting that just the previous day we were up in our room and we heard somebody yelling for help. I think I was working because my boss makes me work on vacation. And
what a jerk. What a jerk.
I was on my laptop literally putting together the bulletin or something. So I heard somebody yelling help, and I just kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, I sure hope that's not some jerk in the swimming pool, playing with this kid. And we actually looked out, and pretty much in the exact spot where I found myself the next day.
It wasn't some jerk. It was some moron that got himself.
Yeah.
Look at that moron
I was out there in
What
deep water. But literally people had to swim out from shore and bring him in. And that's exactly what happened to me the very next day. So somebody had called 911, which I kind of regret, but I'm kind of glad of too, because of how it resulted. So the paramedics were there and giving me oxygen and all that. My blood pressure was extremely low, and they convinced me that they should take me to the hospital.
Yeah, admit you.
Which I agreed to, and so I'm in the ambulance, and my blood pressure was down at like 80 something, and they were trying to bring it up to at least 110, if not 120. So in the midst of all that, I had an IV, I had oxygen, and for some reason I was just really tired.
I wonder why.
Trying to hang on to life. So they had the stretcher, I guess, propped up, so I was kind of in a sitting position, and I just asked them to say, hey, can I just lay back for a little bit? And they're like, oh, sure. I laid it back, and I just laid back and just closed my eyes. It's like as soon as
there a light? Like this blinding light?
Kind of was. I mean, it literally was. I closed my eyes, and in the midst of all that trauma and turmoil, I just all of a sudden felt so at peace. It's just like, a wash of peace just kind of came over me. And that's when it happened, that I just heard in my head. In the midst of all that, the last thing I'm thinking about is, anything else. But I heard 5 words, which was, it's okay, you can retire. So I'm just, soaking wet with sand all over me and laying on a stretcher in an ambulance. And those are the words that came to my head was, it's okay, you can retire.
So you've been waiting on God to reveal something to you all your life. And
and that's how he does
Speak to me, God. And his words were, it's okay, you can retire. That's just interesting that those are the words that he spoke to you at that point. That just...
Yeah. It's like, obviously that was the last thing on my mind. Like, hey, I wonder if I can retire now.
But it's not. It's not like a surprise or anything, because, life's an awesome story. And if you go all the way back to 9 years old, starting, joining the Worldwide Church of God, and you've got almost this work ledger placed in front of you from even that young age, and that you take all these steps. And we've already talked finances. It's all financial eventually, And as you get older, you're striving to work and to work and to work, and the money's going where the money's going to Jesus, and building this and building your family and building this household, and eventually you get to a point where the words being, it's okay, you can retire, fit really well into Doug's story. And something that I thought was crazy, you mentioned it twice, is this same phrase, this fulfilling peace, that your son, whom you taught what you would have taught him when you were 9, when he was 9, the whole Sabbath thing, and how they feel this fulfilling peace, the same turn of phrase that you used once again whenever you laid back on the stretcher, the fulfilling peace that you felt. And he says it's okay, you can retire. I think it's cool to watch how lots of things come full circle in our lives through what God displays through us. And the words, it's okay, you can retire, though oddly specific, are even more specific to your story, and how it's been this... It's like a theme, like an underlying theme of workmanship through your whole life that I think is pretty interesting. So retire is almost to me seems like a more impactful word than it's okay, you could move, or it's okay, you could rest, or it's okay, the boys need you, or anything. He says it's okay, you can retire.
Well, it needs to be said. If you know Doug, those were the perfect words to be said.
Amen.
Because Doug works tirelessly, and I know Doug is a planner. I met with Doug a few years back and said, okay, what's your plan? Because I know you've got one. What's your exit strategy? And so the fact that God came in and did something totally different than what Doug's exit strategy was also pretty remarkable to watch that play out as well. Be ahead of your timeline. So that's pretty amazing. So you're able to come back and I'm sure that it wasn't completely settled yet at that point, other than God says you can retire. There's probably got to be some questions running around in your mind yet going, really?
Yeah.
Can this happen?
There's still T's to cross and I's to dot.
Exactly.
Because I'm a planner, and I wasn't planning that yet.
Exactly. We were actually thinking that we were probably going to be working another year or two. And again, as God would have it, I think it was maybe 12 days after that happened on April 27th. I remember the day. We had our annual meeting with our financial advisor, and
I should not know who his financial advisor is. I really shouldn't, but I do.
Is it Dave Ramsey?
It is, well, almost.
Close.
But he goes by the name of Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
That's how I always remember it. Wah, 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 wah.
I've never called him that to his face, but it is James. But yeah, I refer to him as Jimmy. It's easier to remember. But yeah, we had our annual meeting with him, Zoom meeting, and he was going through all the numbers and everything. I'm like, okay, just get to the point. And he got to the point. Not the Point Church, but he got to the point. And it was funny. He almost said the exact same words as God, or at least the words in my head, which was, yeah, you can retire whenever you want. The numbers are looking good, which just stunned us because, again, we had been thinking another year, 2, 3.
Right.
And we'd
It was
always
not
said,
my plan, not the Doug Rendall plan.
and we'd always said, even to you and to God, that we will be here as long as you want us to be.
As long as we needed.
And
Absolutely.
everything seemed to be pointing to it's okay
Nice.
until I told you. And you said, no way, not a chance.
Not a chance.
Not happening.
Not happening.
No, I don't care what God
Who's
says.
going to do what I don't want to do?
Hi, Matt.
No.
Guess what's being rewritten?
What is this in my
Matt's
contract?
contract.
Dude, Doug's job.
You guys actually have written contracts?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, we
Oh.
do.
Job descriptions and all. And you know what it says at the bottom of every job description?
Subject to change?
Anything that the lead pastor asks you to do. Did you see the fine print? It's only in like 2 font.
Failure to abide
In
by
light
all
gray.
that the lead pastor would have you do will result in immediate termination. And your free ticket to heaven is revoked.
So Doug came to Mindy and I. He actually took us out for dinner, and I knew there was a problem when he says, we want to take you guys out for dinner.
And pay for
Nothing
it.
is free. Nothing is free in this life.
Did he go somewhere that he had a coupon?
He did. He actually had free meals set up.
There you go.
I almost ruined your table.
I missed that shot. It was on Tim. Dang it.
So we went out to dinner and we talked about it. And I did jokingly say right up front, no way. Nope, this is selfish of you. I don't care what God says. You're not leaving. But the truth of the matter is absolutely, and so we've been working on this. Doug is actually going to be moving out to Colorado here in another month.
3 weeks.
Yeah, less than a month. So exciting times for him. He is actually going to be continuing to work on staff about 10 hours a week.
You can't run. You can run, but you can't stop.
Right.
We're not relinquishing that. So he's going to be working part-time out there about 10 hours a week, working on some of the same tech things that he can do, sitting in the comfort of his luscious apartment,
Condo. Yeah.
condo, Sorry.
Don't
Luscious
call it an
condo.
apartment.
that none of us know how to do.
You're right. Probably sitting in his pool, hot tub, whatever is outside his condo.
Oh,
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
The mountains.
The mountains, right? So, Doug, we wish you a lot of great luck. We thank you for everything that you've done here. You've got a tremendous story. God's going to continue to
Absolutely.
build that story. The fulfilling
right.
piece that seems to not only flood into your life, but man, you have poured that into so many other people's lives as well. We thank you for that. We thank you for what God has done, will continue to do, and we look forward to the future in that. So, there's one thing that I do know about Doug is that not only does he love his family, he's moving closer to his family. He's made that commitment to be there. Loves his wife. You know, if there was anybody that could model how to care for their spouse, it's Doug and Ramona.
Okay.
And he loves people. There's no doubt about it. One of the things that we're going to miss here is the fact that I think a lot of people look at Doug as their pastor, and he is the pastor for many, many people. And because he loves people and they feel it and they know it and they see Jesus in him. But more importantly is if you are around Doug, you will know that he loves Jesus. He loves God. And it's just how he lives his life. And so, Doug, really thank you for being here, being a friend, being a mentor of mine, being in our lives, and helping out with the church and doing what you have done over these many years, not just the last 7, but the many years.
Many
years.
Many.
That's where the gray hairs have come from, I'm sure.
Yeah, here.
But
I've got a few.
Yeah. But we thank you. We love you guys and look forward to the future because it's not over yet.
Yeah.
Definitely
he's
not
not
over
getting
yet.
away from us anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we won't see your shining face around here every weekend. So,
Well, I thank you. All you guys you've said at staff meetings that your staff is second to none. And
yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that. I mean, it's amazing the people that God continues to put together to be staff here at this church.
Yeah.
And I mean, even though we were 30 years in the previous church, I think the last 20 years have just molded and shaped us, in so many ways. So I appreciate you for all that you've done to love on the staff, to love on this church, on this area. It's been literally amazing to see. I've told Ramona so many times, especially over the last 7 years, that I sure hope Tim doesn't die because there's no way I could be doing what he's doing on a continual basis. So
Yeah,
I just appreciate you.
That's
so
humbling.
much.
But I'll tell you what, it's and I know we're throwing around a lot of attaboys to people, but it's true. I mean, we have some amazing people. God has brought amazing people.
Yeah.
In and out of these doors so many different times. I always say we're a transient church, but God seems to bring the right people at the right time to do his will. And so it's been an amazing ride. So,
Every time the harvest is plentiful, he sends just the right worker
just the right.
to help you swing by and execute it well, and then he takes them away.
Right.
Then you get a new farmer.
Yeah.
Spread my wings and fly away.
Joey,
This is why I'm on the tech team.
About to say they hired me
Never
to
sing
do
again.
that.
No more singing.
all right. Well, we thank you guys for joining us today on this podcast,
Yeah.
the Casting Point podcast. We hope that you will continue to watch these and share these and subscribe if there's any way to subscribe. See, I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Going on the YouTube channel.
Going
Tim.
on YouTube.
Going on the
so you
YouTube
can
channel.
subscribe if you would like to. We would love for you to
Yeah.
subscribe.
Hit
And,
the like button, everyone.
Smash that like button.
and you can find our merch. Well, we don't have any merch, but
Ooh, it's coming. It'll be here at some point.
so I'm just thinking about all the YouTubers that I watch. There.
Yeah. What do they say when they close?
Merch.
Like, share, subscribe.
And we will see you. All right. Take care.